to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a soft little harbor of sound and story, where tonight you drift into the Lantern District, a place of warm light and quiet love. As you settle in, allow your body to find the most comfortable position it can. Let your shoulders soften, letting go of the weight they have carried through the day. Take a slow, unhurried breath in and feel your lungs gently fill. Then breathe out, letting the air leave your body in its own time, taking tension and noise away with it. This is your time of peaceful pause. Outside the world can move and spin, but here, for now, there is only stillness and the gentle promise of a story about lanterns, music, and the soft glow of love unfolding beneath a velvet night sky. Imagine yourself gliding along a cobbled street just after twilight, the air cool against your skin, scented with river mist and faint traces of jasmine. Above, hundreds of lanterns hang from slender strings, gently swaying, washing the stone and wood in a warm golden light. Each breath you take becomes slower, easier, as though the lanterns themselves are breathing with you warm and steady. Feel your jaw unclench, your hands resting more loosely where they lie. If a thought drifts through your mind, let it pass like a small boat on the water, not needing to stop, not needing to be held. Another breath, in and out. The lanterns glow brighter, the sky grows deeper. And as you sink deeper into calm, the story of the Lantern District begins to unfold. In the Lantern District, night never arrived all at once. It slipped in gently, like ink seeping through paper, darkening the sky by slow degrees, while strings of lanterns bloomed to life one by one. Along the river, houses leaned close to one another, their wooden balconies cupped over narrow streets like gentle hands. Delicate bridges arched across the water, their railings wrapped in vines and lantern cords, reflected twice over in the still surface below. At this hour, shopkeepers lit wicks, tea steam rose in curling ribbons, and the air hummed with soft conversation, the clink of cups, and the distant sound of a violin drifting from the central bridge. In a small workshop, nestled between a tea house and a spice stall, lived Mira, a lantern maker whose hands knew the language of light. Her shop was lined from floor to ceiling with lanterns of every shape and color, round ones like moons, long ones like gently falling rain, painted scenes of cranes in flight, mountains wrapped in mist, gardens full of peonies and cherry blossoms. The room smelled of rice paper, warm wax, and a hint of citrus oil she used to polish the wooden frames. As evening settled outside, she moved through the familiar ritual of her craft, the slow, steady rhythm that calmed her heart. She trimmed wicks, dipped her brush in soft, watery colors, and listened to the first footsteps of the night passing her door. Across the river on the broad stone bridge that joined the two sides of the district, Rowan tuned his violin beneath the first glow of the lanterns overhead. He'd played in the lantern district for many years, long enough that some of the older lanterns seemed to bow a little whenever he arrived, as though they remembered every song. His music was gentle and wandering, like a stream weaving through smooth stones. He never rushed a note, never forced a melody to reveal itself before it was ready. Tonight, as he drew the bow across the strings and heard the first sighing phrase bloom out into the open air, he felt the familiar quiet that came with playing here, in this place where light and water and sound folded around each other in perfect, unhurried harmony. Mira and Rowan had never spoken more than a handful of words to each other, yet their lives had long been threaded together by the lanterns and the music. When the world outside felt heavy to her, Mira would stand at the edge of her doorway and listen. The notes from Rowan's violin wrapped themselves around the lanterns in her shop, slipping in through the window. Lattice like gentle visitors. She thought of his music when she painted shades of blue along the edges of a lantern meant to glow like midnight. And on quiet nights, when business slowed and the district breathed in rest, she found herself humming his melodies without realizing it, her fingers tracing the air as if shaping invisible paper beneath them. Rowan, for his part, often watched the light from Mira's workshop change as the evening deepened. From his place on the bridge, he could see her door open and close, lanterns passing in and out like tiny suns cradled in careful hands. Sometimes he glimpsed her silhouette against the painted glow inside, head bent, brush in hand. When the river breeze shifted, he caught the faint, clean scent of wax and paper and citrus. He would let his bow linger, stretching a gentle note into the air, imagining it reaching her doorstep. When he played his softer songs, the ones that felt like pages turning slowly, he always found his eyes drawn towards that doorway of light. In preparation for the Night of Woven Lights, a festival celebrated once every year, the entire district stirred with a quiet, joyful purpose. This was the night when the lanterns were not just decorations, but carriers of wishes, of promises, of tender words unspoken. Residents painted messages on slips of paper, tied them with silk, and tucked them inside handmade lanterns to set upon the river. Mira's workshop became even more of a sanctuary than usual, its shelves transformed into rows of resting dreams waiting to be awakened by flame. She worked late into the evenings, yet the work did not feel like labor. Each lantern she shaped and painted was a kind of gentle conversation with those who would hold it later, a way of saying, "I see your hope. I hold it carefully." This year, Mira decided to make one lantern just for herself, not for the festival market, not for a neighbor's wish, but for her own heart. It felt strange at first. She was so used to creating light for others that the idea of making something only she would release into the night felt almost indulgent. She set a single wooden frame on her work table and sat in front of it, as the violin music from the bridge floated in through the open window. The melody seemed more tender tonight, as if it were tiptoeing around something fragile and new. Mira listened, breathed, and waited for the lantern's shape to reveal itself to her. Light moved across the workshop walls as she worked, soft and shifting, like water rippling under moonlight. She chose a delicate rice paper that glowed faintly even before any flame touched it. With slow strokes, she painted a river that wound all the way around the lantern's surface, weaving between small houses with curved roofs, bridges sprinkled with tiny lanterns, and figures walking side by side. Above the painted river, she added small, floating lights, each one tipped with the softest hint of rose. Without meaning to, she painted a violin resting against a railing, and beside it, a second lantern maker's bench. When she stepped back, she realized that this little scene looked very much like her own district, her own nights, the familiar figure on the bridge, and the quiet glow of her workshop. Rowan, too, prepared a small offering for the night of woven lights. He visited an old paper seller who kept bundles of hand-dyed sheets wrapped in twine, their colors soaked from wildflowers and bark, from herbs and tea leaves. Rowan chose a sheet the color of pale ember light, soft and warm, without being bright. He spent an afternoon folding and shaping it under the guidance of the patient paper seller, turning the flat sheet into a small, four-sided lantern that was simple on the outside but strong at its corners. When asked what he would paint on it, he hesitated. He was not a painter. His language was sound. Yet in the end, he dipped a brush into ink as dark as the deepest river pool and traced a single, unbroken line that spiraled gently around the lantern. To his surprise, as he drew, the line curved into shapes that reminded him of lantern cords, of brush strokes on paper, of hands deftly tying knots. On the evening of the festival, the lantern district glowed as though it had gathered every star that could not fit in the sky. Lanterns of every size and color floated above the streets, hung from balconies, perched on windowsills, and lined the bridges in a soft, unending river of light. The real river below carried hundreds of small boats, each one dressed with a lantern like a jewel. The air was full of scents: sweet steamed buns, roasted chestnuts, cinnamon tea, and flowers that opened only at night. Soft laughter drifted from doorways. Children pointed and whispered in awe, and somewhere a wind chime sang along with the violin on the bridge, which was playing its easiest, most welcoming song. Mira wrapped her special lantern in a piece of cloth and cradled it against her chest as she stepped out into the festival night. She locked her workshop door behind her and felt the familiar excitement of seeing all the lanterns she had made, now in other hands, woven into the living fabric of the celebration. Here was a small, round lantern she remembered painting with falling petals, carried by a young couple walking close together. There was a tall, narrow one with a painted crane, swaying gently in the hands of an old woman leaning on her cane. Mira watched them pass, her heart as warm as the lights themselves. Down at her side, she held the cloth-wrapped bundle a little tighter, feeling the frame of her private lantern beneath her fingers. On the bridge, Rowan began a new song as Mira reached the first step. The melody rose slowly, as if it were also walking up the stone incline, lantern light sliding over polished violin wood. His music threaded through the crowd, dipping between conversations, lifting over the river and brushing softly past Mira's ears. She paused to listen, as she often did, but tonight the moment felt different. The festival lights seemed to lean in, the sound of the river hushed itself, lanterns overhead swayed in an almost imperceptible rhythm with the music, as though every wick had stopped to listen. Mira took another step forward, then another, until she stood near the bridge's center, close enough to see the lines of concentration and contentment on Rowan's face as he played. When his song came to a natural, unhurried end, the crowd around them clapped softly, the way the district had always clapped for him. Rowan lowered his violin, gave a small, grateful bow, and then, as he straightened, his gaze met Mira's. For a heartbeat, it felt as though the entire lantern district exhaled. The background sounds blurred into a gentle hum, and there was only lantern light, the faint echo of the last violin note, and the quiet recognition of two people who had long shared the same nights without names to give each other. Mira offered him a shy smile, and he, feeling a steady warmth rise in his chest, smiled back. They might have passed with only that look between them, each returning to their own familiar routines, had it not been for the lantern in Mira's hands. The cloth slipped slightly, and Rowan saw the faint outline of the painted river beneath it. Curiosity, gentle and respectful, stirred in him. He stepped a little closer, careful not to crowd the space between them. Mira noticed his glance, and after a moment of hesitation, unfolded the cloth so that the lantern's painted sides could breathe in the lantern light around them. The river on its surface seemed almost to move into the glow, the bridges arching gracefully, the tiny lanterns painted atop them, echoing the ones above the crowd. Rowan looked at the lantern, then back at Mira. He heard himself asking, in a voice softened by the night, whether she had made it. She nodded, a small motion that sent a loose strand of hair slipping gently along her cheek. She told him she made lanterns for the district, that perhaps he had seen her workshop near the tea house. Of course he had. He'd seen the light from her windows for years. He said as much. And then, more quietly, he admitted that her lanterns had often kept him company while he played. They shared a moment of surprised laughter at that, each realizing that the other had also been a quiet presence in their nightly lives. The current beneath the bridge whispered along the stone supports, nudging boats and reflections alike. The festival called softly from all directions. A vendor sang the virtues of jasmine buns. A child gasped as a lantern slipped free from its cord and drifted up into the sky. And somewhere a door closed with a hushed click. Rowan, feeling a gentle courage that seemed to come not from boldness but from the familiarity of this district, asked if Mira would like to walk with him along the river before they released their lanterns. She agreed, her yes emerging as naturally as the lanterns blooming overhead. They began to walk side by side, their footsteps slow, the air full of light. As they moved along the river path, the district revealed itself to them in small, intimate scenes. A cat napped on a warm windowsill, its fur touched by lantern glow. A group of elders sat on low stools, playing a card game in companionable silence, broken only by an occasional chuckle. A pair of children tried to count every lantern they could see, giving up amid giggles as the lights seemed to multiply faster than their words. Mira and Rowan spoke in low tones, sharing little pieces of their lives with the ease of people who had watched the same sunsets, heard the same bells, smelled the same spices drifting through the air. Mira told him about how she had learned the delicate art of lantern making from her grandmother, who used to say that a lantern was a small star you could hold in your hands. Rowan told her about the first time he had played in the district, how nervous he had been, and how a single lantern, glowing steadily in a second-floor window, had given him the courage to keep going. They realized with quiet amazement that the window he described belonged to her family's old apartment, and the lantern had almost certainly been one her grandmother had made. The thought that their stories had brushed past each other long before this night filled them both with a calm, expanding wonder. Eventually they reached a spot along the river where the crowd thinned and the water's voice grew clearer. Here, a short pier reached out over the dark surface, its wooden planks shining with the reflections of lantern light. People stepped out one by one to lower their lanterns onto the water, whispering their wishes and watching until the small boats drifted beyond easy sight. Mira and Rowan stood at the edge of the pier, their shoulders nearly touching, the warmth between them quiet but unmistakable. The night around them felt full and gentle, as if the district itself was listening and holding this moment with care. Mira unwrapped her lantern and held it so that the painted river faced the real one below. Rowan set his simple spiral-marked lantern beside hers. For a while they simply looked at the two creations resting together on the wooden pier. Then Rowan asked softly what wish she would send with hers. She considered this, her thumb smoothing an invisible line along the wood. She said she wished for a love that felt like light in a safe place, warm and steady, like a lantern that never tried to outshine the stars, but simply glowed to guide gentle steps home. Rowan listened, the words settling into him like notes, finding their place in a melody. When she asked in turn about his wish, he said he wished for a heart that could be brave in quiet ways. Brave enough to stay, brave enough to be seen, brave enough to let someone else's light rest close. He did not say it, but as he spoke, he thought of how her lanterns had always been nearby, how her presence in the district had stitched comfort into his evenings without either of them needing to speak. The river below them moved with unhurried patience, bearing other lanterns onward. The time to add their own had arrived. Together they knelt at the edge of the pier and lit the wicks inside their lanterns. The tiny flames shivered once, then steadied, washing the painted river and inked spiral in a soft, living glow. Mira and Rowan each took a side of the small wooden boards on which the lanterns rested, and then, as naturally as breathing, their hands met in the middle. Their fingers touched, light as falling dust, and neither pulled away. The lantern light painted their joined hands in gold. For a few precious seconds, everything else receded. The distant laughter, the calls of vendors, the creak of boats. There was only the warmth of skin against skin, the hush of flame, the vast, gentle presence of the night. They released the boards at the same moment, letting the current take the lanterns. The little lights bobbed once, twice, then began to glide outward, joining the slow procession of glowing wishes already on the river. Mira and Rowan remained crouched side by side, watching until their lanterns became just two more soft sparks among many. Even when they lost sight of them, they stayed there, their shoulders touching, listening to the murmur of water against wood. The quiet between them did not feel empty. It felt full, like the pause between one song and the next, when everyone listening knows the music will continue. The night stretched on, gentle and unhurried. Eventually they rose from the pier and began walking back toward the bridge. Above them, lanterns still swayed, though a few had burned low, their colors softening, edges blurring into the darkness. The crowds began to thin as families turned toward home, carrying their contentment with them like invisible lanterns. Mira and Rowan walked slowly, speaking now and then, but often just sharing silence. When they reached the bridge again, Rowan rested his violin case against the railing and turned to her. There, beneath the hanging lantern cords, he asked whether she might like to meet here again on another evening, not just in passing, but with intention. Perhaps he could play while she sketched new lantern designs. Perhaps they could trade stories of their days, or simply stand side by side and watch the river together. The words came out softly, yet with a calm steadiness. Mira felt that same steadiness in her chest as she answered. Yes, she said, she would like that very much. The lanterns overhead seemed to nod in quiet approval. And so it began. On many nights that followed, long after the festival had passed, the Lantern District became the gentle witness to a love that grew not in sudden bursts, but like light slowly filling a lantern from within. Mira would bring a small sketchbook and sit on a low bench near the bridge while Rowan played. He would glance up now and then to see her capturing the curves of his violin, the way lantern light kissed the river, the shapes of people pausing to listen. She found her designs becoming softer, more fluid, influenced by the music's gentle motion. He found his melodies growing warmer, threaded with the quiet joy of her nearby presence. Sometimes after he finished playing, they would walk through the district together as they had on the night of the festival. They watched new lanterns appear in familiar windows, heard new stories from vendors and neighbors. They learned the rhythm of one another's days, the small habits and preferences that made them who they were. Mira liked to begin her mornings in silence, stirring ink in a shallow dish until it reached the perfect softness. Rowan liked to start with sound, humming to himself as he tuned strings and ran his fingers along the wood. They shared these details with a calm, unhurried affection, as if placing small treasures into one another's hands.
As the seasons turned, the lanterns in the district changed their colors and patterns. In colder months, lanterns resembled snowflakes and frosted windows. On mild evenings, they bloomed with flowers and vines. Through all of it, the bond between Mira and Rowan deepened, steady and kind. They did not need grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Their love was most visible in small acts. Rowan arriving at the workshop door with a thermos of hot tea when he knew she'd worked late into the evening. Mira slipping a newly crafted lantern into his hands with a design that matched the feeling of a song he had played the night before. The district, in its quiet, patient way, held them. The bridges, the cobbled streets, the river with its unceasing journey, all bore witness to the simplicity and tenderness of their connection. Neighbors began to speak of them as naturally as they spoke of the weather or the current of the river. The lantern maker and the violinist, the ones whose evenings were woven together with light and music. Children noticed that the lanterns nearest the bridge often seemed to glow a little warmer and would point and whisper about stories the district might be telling itself. As each night came to its close, the lantern district gradually loosened its bright embrace. Lantern keepers snuffed wicks one by one, and windows darkened like eyes closing in restful sleep. The river, no longer speckled with as many reflections, grew smoother, its dark surface soothing. Mira and Rowan would often stand on the bridge long after most of the lights had been put out, watching the last few lanterns shimmer and dim. Their hands would find each other almost without thought, fingers interlacing in a quiet, familiar pattern. On nights when clouds veiled the stars and a gentle mist rose from the water, the district felt wrapped in its own soft cocoon. Sound was muted, footsteps fell softly, and the glow from the remaining lanterns turned diffuse and dreamy. In these moments, Mira and Rowan sometimes spoke of their wishes beyond that first festival night. Not big, unreachable dreams, but simple, luminous hopes. To keep making lanterns that held people's secret joys. To keep playing songs that soothed tired hearts. To continue walking side by side through seasons of changing light. Even when the world beyond the district shifted and changed, the lantern district itself remained a constant, peaceful heart. Each evening, it cradled light and sound and love in its careful hands. Each night, it welcomed the familiar figures on the bridge and in the workshop, steady as constellations in a private sky. Over time, the story of their love settled into the district like a well-worn path, known to those who lived there and felt, even by those who passed through only once, as a gentle warmth in the air. As the story of the Lantern District grows softer now, the night wraps itself around the quiet streets like a warm shawl. Lanterns have been dimmed, one after another, until only a few remain, keeping company with the moon. The river moves with a slow, soothing whisper,
its surface dark but calm, carrying faint echoes of songs and the reflections of the last lingering lights. The bridges stand silent and watchful. The workshop shutters are closed. The violin rests in its case. Love, warm and steady, sighs contentedly and settles deeper into every brick and board. The district grows quieter still. Footsteps fade, doors are shut, curtains drawn. The air is soft and cool, with just a hint of the day's warmth lingering like an afterthought. Inside their homes, people drift toward sleep, carrying with them the comfort of small lights and gentle connections. The lanterns that remain glow like sleepy eyes, heavy with dreams. The world has slowed to a peaceful murmur, each sound rounded and distant, nothing sharp, nothing demanding. In this calm, the story rests. The lantern maker and the violinist are safe in their quiet rooms, held by the same night that holds the river and the bridges and the empty streets. Their love glows on like a lantern set in a window to guide travelers home, warm and patient, asking nothing more than to shine. The district itself seems to breathe. Long, slow inhales of cool air, long, easy exhales of warmth and contentment. Everything that needed to happen has happened. Nothing more is required. Now the lantern light softens further, dimming gently until it becomes only a glow in the distance of your imagination, a tiny point of comfort that will not go out even when you sleep. The river's hush slows, matching the rhythm of a resting heart. Thoughts grow quieter, like voices moving farther down a hallway, until they are only muffled murmurs, and then nothing at all. There is no need to remember each detail of the Lantern District. It will be there whenever dreams choose to carry you back. Let the last of the light fade in your mind, leaving only a sense of warmth and safety, as if you are being wrapped in a soft, familiar blanket. The night is gentle, and it holds you as kindly as the district holds its lanterns. Breath by breath, you drift deeper into rest, carried on an invisible current, as calm as the river, as certain as the turning of seasons. Love is near. Peace is all around. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well